everybody. I'm very, very excited about our speaker today. Many of you will recognize her because she's been here before. 4 years ago, probably, was it that? Or you'll recognize her from television, civic events, etc., and you'll find out why in just a little bit. Aliye Shimi. She is a American Muslim. Her parents immigrated from Turkey several years ago. She is the proud mother, and her husband along with her, of 2 daughters, 3 sons, and 2 granddaughters. I don't know where she got the time. I'm just saying, because she, as we'll find out, has been ultra busy. Aliye has played an integral role in many aspects of the Muslim program. She was a committee member, a Council on American Islamic Relations, the Peace Project, and Muslim Mercy, among other activities within her Muslim responsibilities. She's worked in Interfaith Committee, serving the underserved for many years. In fact, her whole adult life has been dedicated to the cause of the underserved, which we're going to find out a lot about today. She's been recognized by the Tulsa Police Department, the Community Service Council, Tulsa World Board of Advisors, as a member of those committees, and are very responsible. She's worked in the Interfaith Committee for more than 20 years, and she serves at a number of boards, commissions, as you might expect. She has a passion for building bridges between diverse communities and fostering relationships that nurture mutual respect, trust, and cooperation. I don't think anybody in this room would doubt the fact that that's necessary now more than ever. And she's played an intimate, important role in our community and beyond. She's been the executive director of the Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry for a number of years. And as many of you know, Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry has been an integral part of the support of our church. We've had a number of people that have been involved. Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry has founded a number of programs, including one that we've all been involved with, and that's Meals on Wheels. But under her leadership, Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry has gone in a new direction. And by the way, I might say the involvement in Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry, 85 years. Buzz McDaniel has been president in the PAC. I wanted to say he was the first president, but it's 85 years ago. And he's presently involved as president of the Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry Foundation. What is important for us to learn about today, that Aliye's leadership has taken Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry in a very new and important part of the underserved. I'm not aware, at least other than superficially, that we have a large number of juveniles that have been sex trafficked. They have nowhere to go. They're sent back into the environment they caused in the first place. So under her leadership, and she'll tell you about the possibility of a home built for these people. So we also know that she has taken on a big responsibility in the resettlement of the Afghan community. I was privileged to have lunch with Aliye maybe 6 months ago. And during that hour that we talked, she must have had at least a dozen calls of people saying, we have people here, we have no place to put them, they don't have any food, they don't have any clothes. And she was the agent of help. So her accomplishments are worthy of our attention. So please join me in welcoming Aliye Shimi.
I'm sorry, I'm so disorganized this we have to have sign up for John 3:16 for the first Saturday of the month. We're going to put the pad over on the table here, and if you will, go ahead and do that. And the announcement that went out about the volunteer committee announced Tuesday the 23rd, and of course Tuesday is the 22nd. And that was the email or the text that I got from Kay Noxiger. I'm assuming it was Tuesday. I think yeah, she's shaking her head. You're more likely to make a mistake on the number than the day, so just so she doesn't get mad at me. I'm so sorry.
Who can get mad at you, Kay? Good morning, everyone, and thank you so very much for having me here. Harvard Avenue is like a second home to me. For a number of years, Courtney served on our executive board as our secretary, and Mr. McDaniel is the president of our foundation board and has served for TMM much longer than I've been around. And Mr. Boswell serves on our foundation board as well. So we can't thank Harvard Avenue enough for all of your contributions, for all of the help that we get. Of course, the Zieglers have been with us forever and a day. So thank you so very much. Ironically, I was sitting at home yesterday afternoon, and Courtney Richards, who your former pastor here, was texting me, and she's in town for a conference, and she said, "What are you doing tomorrow? Can we have brunch?" And I said, "Well, I'm speaking at Harvard Avenue to your challengers class in the morning." So she wanted me to tell everybody hello from her, and she misses you all. So message delivered from Courtney Richards. As Mr. Boswell mentioned, Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry has played an integral role in Tulsa's community. We're going on our 86th year this year, and as he mentioned as well, we've started organizations like the Tulsa Day Center for the Homeless, Life Senior Services, Youth Services of Tulsa, Meals on Wheels, Retired Senior Volunteer Program. All of those were started by Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry. And when they were successful enough to be standalones, they were let off to be standalones. And so we've always been able to be the one to bridge the gap between our community and those in need. So we are so happy to be able to do that. This year, back in July, when we started hearing rumblings that we were going to get large Afghan population coming in, we were contacted by the State Department. So in August, I started working with SIVs, trying to get people who already had family members here in the United States. So we were contacted by TU in the State Department. We started trying to find sponsors for them in different states where they would be able to be relocated to, who weren't coming through the normal refugee channel. So we started working on that in August. In September, we started getting more information from the State Department. And this particular population that we had resettled here in the United States is completely different than a normal refugee population. Normally, refugees flee their countries. They go to different countries. They stay in UNHCR camps for a number of years before they're vetted and approved and things like that. And then they are resettled into 9 different agencies in the United States. Those 9 different agencies are mainly faith agencies like Catholic Charities, the Lutheran Church, the Jewish group, several different organizations. There's 9 national agencies, and those agencies have local chapters. So for the past 50 years in Tulsa, Catholic Charities has been the only agency that has been doing resettlement. This year, we are happy to announce that the synagogue, B'nai Emunah, was approved, and they started resettling as well. So now we have 2 agencies in Tulsa. Oklahoma City still has just Catholic Charities. Of the number of evacuees out of Afghanistan in August, there was 124,000 that were evacuated immediately out of Afghanistan. Of that 124,000, about 70,000 of them were brought to the United States. They were distributed to different military bases around the country. Of that 70,000, initially the first 35,000, that was the first wave, the first 35,000 were divvied up amongst those 9 different agencies. They were brought in as parolees. I know that's a horrible term to call them, but it has legal precedence to be able to get them out of the country quick enough and to be able to bring them here. And these people were people who worked directly with our military. So they were translators, they were people who were doing transport, people who were cooking for our military. These were individuals who were intimately involved with our government in Afghanistan for a number of years. So of that number, that 35,000, Texas took on the largest number of roughly 4,600 that they were resettling. California took on about 2,800, and good old Oklahoma, we took on a little over 1,850. Yes, but when you look at our population per capita compared to California and Texas, we definitely took on the largest number of Afghans here in Oklahoma. So good job for Tulsa. We did a wonderful job. Yes, we did. In fact, we did such a great job that the Biden administration sent a delegation here back in October, and they wanted to replicate what we were doing here in Tulsa because it was working out so well. So we spent 2 days with the Biden administration going through all the hoops that we were jumping with our groups here, with the 2 groups that are doing the resettlement. So Catholic Charities took on 850. So to give you an idea, normally every year, Catholic Charities takes on somewhere between 200 to 300 refugees total for the entire year. And those come in little waves. They don't come all at once in 3 months. So as you can imagine, Catholic Charities was extremely overwhelmed. They tried to hire staff, they tried to hire case managers, and they needed a lot of heavy lifting from agencies like ours. And B'nai Emunah decided to take on 50. It was their first time, so they were only allotted 50 individuals to take on. They've already brought on 70 to B'nai Emunah of our Afghan folks, and I'll update you a little bit more about that. So as our folks started arriving in September, they were put in hotels. At first they were at the Doubletree downtown. So the entire Doubletree was basically essentially blocked out for all of our Afghan friends. So our role in that was transportation. We started doing all of the transportation. We started transporting them to doctors. We started transporting them to all of their appointments. We started transporting them to prayer services. And we did that in conjunction with all of our faith communities. Of course, we didn't have transportation at the time of our own to be able to transport 200-300 at a time. So we were making frantic calls to all of our friends who had church vans and buses, and we were coordinating, and that was a pretty big job in and of itself, and we're doing that to this day still. We're still doing all the transportation. And as Mr. Boswell mentioned, we had a lot of people who were, falling through the cracks. So our case managers at Catholic Charities worked Monday through Friday, but unfortunately they weren't answering phone on the weekends. So on that Saturday afternoon that we were having lunch, I don't know how many people called me and said, we're out of food, we don't have enough food, we haven't had food since Friday, what are we supposed to do? So picked up the phone, started making those connections, got done with our lunch, started delivering dinner meals to all these people and trying to get all that connected. We worked with another church called Fellowship Congregational. And Chris Moore, the pastor at that church, is the president of our board, currently of our governing board. He turned his fellowship hall into a store. So St. John's Ascensions donated a lot of gently used and new clothing. And I drove to Oklahoma City, another organization there gave us a truckload of diapers and wipes and bathtubs and hygiene products. So we came and we staffed up his fellowship hall. And from September till 2 weeks ago, I was transporting 2 to 3 families a day to the fellowship hall so they can get clothing, they can get diapers, sanitary products, hygiene products, shoes, things like that. And so we've been helping with all of their clothing needs as well. When it came to food, like I said, we've been transporting them to the grocery store. Last week, I received a call roughly at 11:30 at night. And a young lady was having an emergency. She had passed out in her apartment, and her friend was screaming on the phone. Of course, I couldn't understand half of what she was saying because she was speaking in Pashto, and I don't speak Pashto. That's not, one of the languages that I speak. And so I rushed over to TU, picked her up, picked her friend up, rushed them to St. Francis. Of course, I'm not able to communicate with either of them. I have no idea. I have nothing to be able to give the emergency staff. Stayed there roughly till 2:30 in the morning with her, and luckily it was just a ruptured cyst on her ovary, and we were able to bring her back home. But to be able to translate that, that was wonderful. I was, calling the Y to try and get a hold of case manager, couldn't get a hold of anybody there, calling Catholic Charities, couldn't get a hold of anybody there. So that's just how it's been since September. We've just been kind of flying by the seat of our pants. So we really appreciate you all hosting them. You all hosted a dinner here at Harvard Avenue. I don't know how many of you attended the dinner, but it was kind of a double duty. Yes, it was kind of a double duty. So I teach a cultural awareness class for the past 7 years with TPD. I do training for the academy. And so every year when they have a class graduating, we try to appreciate our cadets and welcome them into our community. So we've been having dinners for them at different houses of worship up until COVID hit, of course. And so the one that we hosted here at Harvard Avenue in November was the very first one since 2019. And we were able to introduce our Afghan neighbors to law enforcement. I don't know how much you all know how blessed we are in this country when it comes to law enforcement, but when we say that law enforcement is here to serve and protect, they truly are here to serve and protect. I've traveled extensively to other countries, and when I see the amount of corruption that goes on with law enforcement in other countries, we can't blame our immigrant population for being afraid of law enforcement and the trigger that it gives our immigrant population when they see somebody in authority in law enforcement attire. And so we were able to introduce them from the chief on down, from top brass on down. Everybody was here, we had elected officials here, and we had a wonderful Thanksgiving meal, and this was the first time they got to eat turkey and have a Thanksgiving meal. So they really, really appreciated it. They really loved it. So Catholic Charities has already resettled all of their 850, and they're not taking the second wave. However, B'nai Emunah is getting ready to take on that second wave. Remember, I told you there was 70,000, and we only did the first 35,000. So the second wave, what they're calling on a lily pad is what they're being called, they're getting ready to be resettled. And so we have been working very closely with B'nai Emunah, with the synagogue, to help them with that resettlement. Their model is a little different. They're moving them directly into housing. They're not putting them in hotels and then having to move them into housing. So that way their lives are not disrupted as much. They're able to get their children into school as quick as possible. We are helping with all the transportation for the kids that are having to walk 20, 30 minutes to school. So we've got individuals who are driving them to school. So if you all or any of you all would like to volunteer for transportation, please let me know. We would love to have you. So as far as our Afghan population, that's what we have. We do have a few Syrians that are coming in, a couple of Syrian families that are coming in here in the next couple of weeks. These are people who are coming through the actual traditional refugee channels. One family has been living in a tent in a refugee camp in Amman, Jordan for 8 years now. And so it's a husband and wife, a 32-year-old male, a 29-year-old female, and their 3 young children. 2 of their children have been born in the refugee camp. So they will be here on the 30th. And then there's another family of 5 that will also be coming in 2 weeks later. So when we look at resettlement, when we look at refugees, we have a very large population here in Tulsa of Burmese refugees, of Iraqis, very small population of Syrians, but a lot of South American refugees as well. So I'm so grateful that Tulsa has opened its arms and welcomed our Afghan population, because this was not the case when we looked at our Syrian population many, many years ago. And so I think this has really helped educate our Tulsan community and to see how quickly these individuals are being integrated. Normally, in the normal refugee channels, it takes them 90 days of case management to be able to get here, to get all of their services connected, and then get them employed and get them jobs and let them be on their own. So that's what Catholic Charities is normally supposed to do, give them 90 days of case management, and then it gets brought over to YWCA, and YWCA then does case management for the next 5 years. This has not been the case this time around. Some of our families have been let go at 30 days, and YWCA has had to pick up the slack, and we've had to pick up the slack. And so we've been helping, trying to get employment, get people to cultural classes, get them to ESL classes to teach them English. Most of our population that's here is fairly educated. I will say more than 50% of our population here of our Afghans are children under 18. So that has been very different for us as well. But we've done what we can, and it's been wonderful. And again, we really appreciate all of your support. Kevin has been wonderful. Kevin Howe has been working with us directly with this, and he has been absolutely a delight to work with. And we really, really, truly appreciate it. I know that Mr. Boswell also mentioned some of the other work that we are doing. And that was just something that was just thrown at us in August. So we've been dealing with it since August. That's not in our normal repertoire of doing refugee resettlement. But for the past 3 years, we have been doing research on CSEC, which is commercial sexual exploitation of children. Dr. Kathy LaFortune also sits on our board. And back in 2017, 2018, she brought to our attention that we had a lot of children who were being sexually trafficked here in Tulsa. She's at the Oklahoma Juvenile Bureau, and as she does their evaluations, as she started peeling back those layers, she found out that many of these children are being sexually trafficked. And I know when I say the word human trafficking, a lot of people think of the movie Taken. They think that this foreign entity is coming into this country and swooping up all of our children and taking them away. And the sad reality is that more than 75% of the trafficking that goes on here in our country is done familially. So it's their fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their brothers that are sexually trafficked with these children. And so it is a very difficult crime to prosecute. At any given time, I welcome you to go to 11th and Garnett and go to the quick trip there. At any given time during the day, during the evening, you'll see little girls, 14, 15-year-old children, and you'll see males grabbing them from one car, stuffing them into another car. And unless that child screams that they are a victim, there is nothing that law enforcement can do. Because typically, they'll hold, they'll say, I'll kill your family, I'll do this, I'll do that, and they'll threaten these children. And most of the time, they have them addicted to drugs as well. And so it is a very, very difficult crime for them to prosecute. And so the most that they can get slapped with if a John is caught with a child is pandering, and that's about it. And so we prosecute somewhere between 2 to 3 cases a year of trafficking here in the state of Oklahoma. So we are partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the Attorney General's Office, with the DA's office, and we sit on a task force that we've been working on this for quite some time. So when Kathy LaFortune brought this to our attention, the only facility that is DHS certified and Attorney General certified and contracted is in Idabel, Oklahoma. It has 8 beds and it is constantly full. So unfortunately, these young ladies, when we are identifying them, if they're coming through the Family Safety Center or if they're coming through the Juvenile Bureau, they're either being sent into detention and they're having to sit in a cell in detention, or we have to wait and get them transferred out to another facility in a different state, which takes somewhere between 6 to 18 months, or they have to be handed back to their family members, unfortunately, because of the way that DHS works, until it is proven, and they're right back in the hands of their traffickers. So we started doing research. We've traveled all over the country. We've looked at many different models, and this year our project really picked up a lot of speed with some generous donations of some very, very, very generous individuals. We were blessed with a large plot of land and a decent amount of money to start our project. So I'm happy to announce that in the next 6 months, we'll be breaking ground on our new treatment facility. We will hope to have 20 beds for the girls in the residential wing, and we'll have 4 contingency suites if there's a crisis that we need to do crisis stabilization. If we have to take on a trans child or a boy, they'll be in a completely different wing, but they will be specifically dealt with for treatment of sexual trafficking. So we will also have drug treatment for them at our facility. So the treatment will be somewhere between 8 to 18 months in the first phase of that in our treatment facility. And then we're hoping to build phase 2, which will be transitional housing. So we want our program to be evidence-based, we want it to be trauma-informed, and we want it to be survivor-led, right? We can't possibly fathom what these children have gone through. So to have individuals who are survivors of this to be able to help us with this program is integral, key piece. And so our second phase will be that transitional living, where once the girls graduate from our program after 18 months of being in treatment, they will be there, we will help them with employment, we will help them with their education, whether they go the TCC route or Tulsa Tech route, who we will be partnering with. Then they will, once they live out that year in that transitional stage, then they will move off of the property, but they will continue to help the program. So we'd appreciate your prayers, we appreciate your support. Jim, did I cover just about everything you asked me to?
And more.
And more, okay. I know, once you hand me a microphone, right? Yes, ma'am.
Where's the new facility located?
It will be located in Bixby. It'll still be Tulsa County, but we wanted it to be rural enough. Initially, we were going to build where the CAN facility is, right with CAN, right next to CAN. So the Family Safety Center has purchased that facility on 28th and Sheridan, and we were all going to be on the same campus, but unfortunately, there wasn't enough acreage for us to be able to build our facility there, and our facility there would have to be a 100% lockdown facility to where it would feel more like a jail for these girls. So because we were able to buy land in a rural area, it'll be more like a summer retreat for the girls. So we will have gigantic walls that they will not be able to see because they will be covered by trees, but it will feel more like a summer camp, right? We'll have ropes course, we have a pond out there, they'll be able to do therapeutic yoga, they'll have equine therapy, they'll have canine therapy. So all of these will be incorporated into their treatment. And we're hoping that this will be more relaxing for them with all the amount of trauma that they've gone through. We don't want them to be yet in another lockdown facility. So that's what we're hoping to have.
What is the motivation to traffic a family member? Is it money?
Yes. Yes. Very simply put, we've spoken to many drug dealers. It is so much easier to traffic human beings than it is drugs, because the second you're caught with a bag of drugs, you're going to jail. No ifs, ands, or buts, right? And so you have a much higher risk to traffic drugs than you do human beings. We've had multiple traffickers who've been stopped by police officers, by troopers. All they have to say, oh, that's my girl's daughter, or that's my cousin, or that's my whatever, and they get away with it. We've seen body footage. We've seen body cam footage of law enforcement officers who know that these children are being trafficked, but unfortunately there's nothing they can do because that child is not screaming that they are a victim. And so they buy that child once, and they sell that child 5, 6, 7 times a day, over and over and over again. So it's a low risk and high profit. So most of everybody is switching from trafficking drugs to trafficking human beings. So, and a lot of people think that this just happens in low socio incomes. No, it doesn't. One of the young ladies that we were able to recover was from a very wealthy family in Bixby. She was being trafficked, and her family had no clue that she was being trafficked for 2 years. Absolutely no clue. She befriended somebody on Facebook, on social media, and social media is typically where they troll for children. And so she had befriended this guy thinking he was a 15-year-old. They chatted for some time. Then she met him. She thought he was still 15 years old. Of course, he was older. And so after he took some not so nice pictures of her and things like that, he threatened to use those with her family. Then he threatened to kill her family. So he would come and pick her up at 2 in the morning. He would take her out, traffic her, bring her back by 5:30 in the morning. He made sure that she went to school. He made sure she got straight A's. She was punished if she didn't, so nobody knew except for her best friend. She knew that she was a shell of the person that she was. And that's how they were able to figure out what was going on with her. Nobody had a clue. Her own family didn't even have a clue. So, we have this image of, no, it's only in our low socioeconomic, groups, or no, it's out north. No, it's not. One of the largest busts that we've had here a few years back was that massage parlor on 106th and Memorial. There was a massage parlor there that had a bunch of young, underage Vietnamese girls that were being trafficked. And it was a pretty large bust for the state of Oklahoma. So it's not, it's everywhere. Yes, ma'am.
Are boys trafficked also?
Yes, we've ran into boys who are being trafficked as well. They're sending them to the Tulsa Boys Home. Unfortunately, their program is not geared to deal with sexual trafficking. They deal more with drugs and children who have behavioral issues. And so what our experience has been is that those boys typically end up running away because they're bullied within the population at the boys' home as well. And that's why we've put in contingency pods into the architecture of our facility, so that way in a completely separate wing, we can have boys, we can have trans children, and they'll be completely separate from our girls. So that was the idea behind the way that we are doing the architecture of the building. I know, I'm sorry, I don't mean to ruin your Sunday afternoon by giving you this type of information. However, this is a sad reality that we are living with. When we say trafficking, most of our law enforcement doesn't even understand, right? As I train law enforcement and I talk to them, I've had officers tell me, well, they're prostitutes, they should be arrested. Anybody that's under 18 is not a prostitute. They are a victim. And even the ones that are older than 18, who are adults, most of the time they have been generational trauma and they have been bred into this for years and years and years and years, right? And so to label them as prostitutes and to treat them as such is, it's very sad. So, yes, ma'am.
Idea that it was runaway kids that got into that.
Well, yes, so we do have some children. The statistics are that within 48 hours, a runaway is typically picked up by a trafficker. So what they'll do is, oh, you need a couch to stay on, or you need a hot shower, you need a meal, and that's typically how they'll pick them up. They'll see them backpacking or whatever. They'll bring them in, you know, after staying a week. Well, you've been staying here for a week without rent. Well, guess what? Now you're gonna have to pay, and this is how you're gonna have to pay. So that's typically a lot of the tactics that they use as well.
How will you use volunteers with that treatment center?
With that facility, it's going to be a lot harder to deal with volunteers because even before, as our facility is going to be built, we're going to do a year of training for all of our staff. Like I said, they have to be trauma informed, it has to be evidence based, and we have to have survivors leading it. And so they will go through extensive training before they even come into contact with our population. So this is a very difficult population to work with. Unless if you're trained and certified, that would not be the case, and we will not have volunteers there. You know, if you have anybody in the population here that works with, you know, children who have been traumatized, we would love to get in contact with them. But, you know, with that population, that will not be. With our Afghans, with our refugees, with any of the other programs that we have, with any of our community service projects that we're doing, yes, absolutely, we would love to have volunteers. But this specific population, we have to be very, very careful with this population. Yes, ma'am.
Where is the Afghan community worship? Are there places for you to worship here?
Sure. So in Tulsa, we have one main mosque, and that's at the Islamic Society of Tulsa at 46th and Irvington, if you know where the Tandy Y is, so it's close to Tandy Y, off of 51st and back behind between Sheridan and Yale. And some of them worship there. What we have to understand is that a lot of people assume that every single Afghan that's come off the plane is a Muslim, and that's not the case. We have Christian Afghans, we have Baha'i Afghans, we have Shia Afghans, we have Afghans that are in the nun group as well, that are atheist. So, you know, we've been asking them, what do you prefer? We have a Shia congregation out in Broken Arrow at 71st and 145th out there, so we've been transporting some of them out that way who do not want to go to IST, and that's fine. We have ones that have been going to churches, and we've been transporting them to churches, so it just depends on where they want to go. Yes?
You know, it occurs to me that probably the language deprivation was a big problem with the Afghan group, unless they have children or somebody that speaks English already. I mean, nobody, you're not the only one that doesn't speak.
Of course. And the thing is, they speak multiple different languages, right? Depends on which province they're from. So we have Pashto speakers, we have Dari speakers, we have Farsi speakers. We have some who speak Turkish, so I'm able to speak with them. We have some Urdu speakers amongst them. And so just depending on what dialect, we have Hashai speakers as well. So we have been very blessed that some of the people who came in, very quickly we learned that they were the translators for our U.S. military. And so they speak perfect English. And in fact, we had some of them here. They were on stage translating with me. And some of them have gone to American private schools there. And so they speak English just like I do, even though English is my second language and this is my Okie that I speak to you with. But I was born and bred here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was the first one of my family to be born and bred here when my parents immigrated here. But Turkish was my first language. They taught me Turkish first, so I'm fluent in Turkish. And then I learned English. And then after I married my husband, who's Arab in descent, I learned multiple dialects of Arabic. So those are the languages that I have under my belt. Very few, but you know, that's what it is. And so we've been able to use the translators to be able to communicate with them. And they've been taking English as a second language class already. I mean, second week they got here, we started them with English classes. Yes, ma'am.
You might have said this, but where are the different communities of Afghans located in Tulsa?
Oh, we've got them all over the place.
Is it kind of spread?
Yeah, we've got them all over the place. So we have people out north. We have people in Owasso. We've put 40 families in Stillwater. We have families just about anywhere. We have families in Broken Arrow. We have families in Bixby. We have families in Jinx. We have anywhere we can find housing for them is where we're resettling them. Per federal contract with the federal government, the agency that's resettling them, so here if it's the Catholic Diocese of Northeastern Oklahoma or B'nai Yemena, they have to settle them within 100 square miles of their office. So Stillwater, you know, Bartlesville, Collinsville, they all fall under that 100 square miles. So we're able to resettle them there, yes.
The other question, how large is the Burmese population in Tulsa?
So the Burmese population, we've got roughly about 2,000 Burmese here already. Yeah, and we still have some trickling in through Catholic Charities, but it's roughly about 2,000. And so the large majority, if you go to 81st and Riverside, and so those apartment complexes is made up of predominantly Burmese and Afghan refugees there. So you'll see a lot of Burmese individuals and Afghan individuals who are walking up and down in that area at 81st and
Many of them
Yes.
have been Christian.
I'm sorry?
Many of those,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes they do. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned we have about 70 or 80,000 of the,
Of the 124,000,
and you mentioned about 35,000.
was divvied up initially, yes.
What about the others?
So that's the second wave that I mentioned that I said was on a lily pad. And so that second 35,000 is now being divvied up amongst agencies. And Catholic Charities isn't even able to handle the 850 that they already have here. They knew that they took on way more than they could have. And even their director of resettlement has left, and so now they're waiting to get a second director. But B'nai Emunah is now taking a second wave in of Afghans. So many other agencies will be taking on that second wave of Afghans, and so those 35,000 will be divvied up amongst those agencies and be resettled as well. They've been sitting at bases, military bases.
And how were they selected? I mean, we ask, we got 35,000 that helped with the military. What about these other people? What aspects?
They also helped with the military.
Okay.
These people that were brought here had to have some sort of connection to the U.S. Had to have been working either for, some of them were contracted by Raytheon, some of them were contracted, by all of our, even if they weren't working directly for our military, they were working for our contractors, right? And so that's how they were selected. Many of our friends who were here, they were the only ones that were able to come here. They weren't able to bring their family members. One young man who did the translation on stage, his name is Zarif, and I've been working with him since September, since he came here, and I got him hired on at B'nai Emunah. I had dinner with him on Thursday after we did the legal clinic, so we transported roughly 75 people so we could start doing all their immigration work. And I said, Z, are you okay? You don't look well. He said, well, I've just been having nightmares. I said, what's going on? And he said, every night I see either my mom being killed or somebody else being killed. And you know, he left 10 siblings behind, his mother and his father behind. He's the only one here. So he's trying to get his paperwork as quick as possible to see if he can get at least his mother and father here. And of course, that's a long road ahead of him, but you know, the trauma that they've endured, we have to, you know, we have to understand this has been going on for 20 years in their backyard. And so there's so much trauma involved, and we've been able to connect them with mental health professionals so they can get the care that they need, but you know, it's been generational trauma, so it's really hard. Yes?
Who is the actual sponsor of this facility in Bixby, and how's it going to be?
It'll be Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry. It's Tulsa Metropolitan Ministry. It'll be yet another flagship program that we will start, just like we started the Tulsa Day Center and so on and so forth.
TMM
It's a,
financially responsible?
yes, TMM is financially responsible. I will be the executive director. We will be staffing it. We will be running the program. So the brick and mortar, we have to fundraise for the brick and mortar for the building of the facility. And then the federal grants and the state-run grants that we'll get will pay for the employment and the operational. So we're looking at about $4.5 million for building the facility, and we're looking at a little over $1 million a year for operations. So the grants will come through, and those will be the ones that will help us. And we have been selected, 2 years ago, we were selected by the DOJ, by the Department of Justice, as one of the states that was doing work in human trafficking. And so they had us be a part of a human trafficking sustainability cohort. So they are helping us, they are liaising with us along, kind of holding our hand throughout this process. So we have experts who are holding our hands throughout this process. In 2017, I was also asked to speak at the UN about the projects that we've been working on here in Tulsa. And so this year I will be traveling back in June, and they've elected to pick our program as one of their case studies. So our program, which we've dubbed Francine House, is the name of our project. We've named it Francine House after Judge Francine, who's put in decades of work in family court system. I don't know if any of you all know Judge Francine, but she is absolutely amazing. And to honor her, she's the one that started the Human Trafficking Task Force here as well. And so to honor her, we've named it Francine House after her. So I will be traveling in June to Geneva and doing the work with the Human Security Council, and hopefully by the end of that trip, we will be certified through the UN to do trafficking work. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your video,
The Afghan refugees, yes. So wherever, if we're able to find apartments, they're putting them in apartments. I say we, it's Catholic Charities and B'nai Emunah. So if they're able to find houses, they're putting them in houses. So it just depends on what they're able to find availability. As you know, we have a huge housing crisis as it is. So to be able to house an additional 850 people on top of our Tulsans who are in a housing crisis, it's been absolutely crazy.
So who pays for these houses?
So the way that the money that comes in, so Catholic Charities, for each individual that they receive from the federal government as a resettler or a refugee, it's $2,500. Half of that money goes to the individual, the Afghan individual. It's called their welcome money, and the other half goes to the agency. So whether it's Catholic Charities or B'nai Emunah, that's the fee they get per individual to be able to do resettlement work. On top of that, they get federal money to help them with their housing, to help them with their food, to help them with anything that they need to get them connected to services. And essentially, they have that 90 days to get them connected to services. But they have to have documents to get them connected to those services. So we've had people who've waited 2, 3, 4 months to get their documents from the State Department. And because this was a new program, normally everything would go through the proper channels. All 70,000 individuals that came in, all of their paperwork was being mailed to one office at the State Department, and then individuals had to sift through all that paperwork, figure out where these people were, and send those documents to the states that these people were sent to. So that's why it was just an incredible debacle trying to get documentation for these individuals. On top of that, they have 1 year. Per immigration law for our country, they have 1 year to change their status from parolee to either asylee or whatever that status will be changed to. And asylum is what they're going to have to change their status to, but unfortunately that is the hardest status to get. And so TMM will be responsible to transport all of these individuals to Houston, because they won't do Zoom and they won't have judges come here. We have to transport them to the immigration courts in Houston, and they have to appear before judges, they have to take their attorneys with them, and they have to present their cases to be able to get asylum. So, as you can imagine, I'm lucky I cover my hair because I've pulled out my hair I don't know how many times trying to figure out what to do with our friends. So, it's been rough, but we are so grateful for all the help that we've received from our community. Yes, ma'am.
You said that a lot of these people have worked for companies here. Are these companies helping?
Yes. Yes, they are. So just to let you know, on Friday, the owner of Bloss Equipment Rental, he has hired a Ukrainian, and he had hired, one of this Afghan gentleman, and he wanted to help him purchase a car. And so I've been helping them, trying to liaise in between, trying to figure out how to do that. And so the owner said, listen, I'll buy the car, and then I can just deduct from his check, and we'll get it figured out. Well, these individuals have no driving history here. So for us to be able to get them insurance, it was $3,200 for liability insurance for 6 months. If you can imagine, for the first 6 months just for liability on an older vehicle for this one gentleman who's in his 40s. And so the owner was like, listen, I'll just put him on my insurance for 6 months. He'll be a driver on my insurance. And that way he'll get the history, and then in 6 months he can get his own insurance. So I spent roughly 3 hours going back and forth between insurance companies. Most insurance companies won't even cover them. So trying to figure out which insurance company would be willing to cover them. And so this gentleman was very lucky that his boss is willing to do this for him. Not very many of them, that's not the case. So just a little bit of my day-to-day. I had it, yes.
Roughly how many people have had employment placements of folks like that?
Of the 850 that we already have, well, we have more than 850. 850 was from Catholic Charities and 70 from B'nai Emunah. So I would say we have roughly 70% of them already employed. 70% of that number has already been employed. So we've been working with the YWCA and other agencies, and we've been so grateful that companies and factories and businesses have reached out to us and said, hey, we're willing to hire them and we're willing to train them. And so we have some of them who are very educated and who have, background in HR or whatever their background is, or civil engineering or finance, and we've been able to place them in the appropriate fields, and so we've got them working. Yes, sir.
Second question about mine.
Yes.
Would you share with us sort of the projected time frame on facility.
Yes.
Young ladies there.
Yes.
who have no-
Sure. So again, because we were waiting to have the funds to purchase the land, and a couple months ago, we were graciously blessed with a large piece of land. And so that's kind of fast forwarded our projected time for this facility. So I'm currently working with the city of Bixby to get the rezoning and get the permissions and work on the master plan of this facility. We're hoping that should take about 6 months, and then we should be able to break ground. I have a very ambitious timeline of about a year for building of the facility. So in that year span, while we're building the facility, we will be hiring and training all of our staff as well. So we'll get at least a year of training in. And so I'm hoping by 2024, I'm gonna try and get it done before then, just for you, Mr. McGinn. But I'm hoping by 2024, we'll have our facility up and running.
And the public will know about the fundraising?
Yes. We will announce it in our newsletter. You'll see us in the media as well. And you can always talk to Mr. Boswell or Mr. McDaniel, since they're my bosses as well on this project. But yes, absolutely, they will know. However, our facility is going to have to remain a secret as far as the location. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to divulge where the facility is. I can tell you the general population. But we have a lot of issues with traffickers coming in, threatening and trying to snatch our girls and things like that. And so all the research that we've done with some of the major cities like San Diego and Houston and Boston, that has been the case. So they've kept their facilities hidden. Their main offices, their ministry offices, is, in a very public place, and you can deal directly with the ministry offices. However, the facility itself is kept secure. It's a secure facility.
Are most of these young girls happy to be in a situation like that? I mean, after they've been rescued?
After they've been
Are
rescued?
they happy to be there, or do they want
So unfortunately, some of them, because they've been in the situation for quite some time, it is a challenge, especially when they're addicted to drugs, because their traffickers get them addicted to drugs. So they try to get out, and national statistics show that they run away at least 3 times before they're ready to come back and be placed in a facility. There's 2 different ways that they can be brought into our facility. If they're court ordered by DHS and by the federal system, they have to be there. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They have to be there. Or they can they can bring themselves in. But we will also get, referrals from the Family Safety Center. We've had multiple girls that have been, one was strangled and beaten with a hammer, and she came through the Family Safety Center. She kept saying she was older than 18, but they guessed that she was about 14 years old, the same nurse that was examining her. And so we'll have other partners like the Family Safety Center. We have a multi-faith chaplain at the Family Safety Center. That's yet another one of the organizations that we help start. And so through CAN. So our target population that we're looking for is 12 to 18. So anything older than 18 would go to Divis or Day Spring Villa, which is in Sand Springs. And then anything under 12 would go to CAN, Child Abuse Network. And then so our target population will be between 12 and a day before 18. Yeah.
When do you sleep?
Here recently, I've required a little bit more of it. A couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, and so I've been going through treatment and whatnot, and so that's required a little bit more sleep for me to get through that. But to be able to help these young ladies, like I said, as Mr. Boswell mentioned, I'm a mother and a grandmother, and I can't explain to you how upsetting it is when I lay eyes on a child who has been, especially when it's a family member. It's one thing when it's a stranger, but when it's a family member, I'm grateful that I'm not the judge or the person dealing with that family member, because it would not be pretty. And so we try to do everything we can to help them. So I think I've gone over time, haven't I? Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so very much. We really appreciate you all. I hope you all have a blessed